Hello and welcome, everyone. We are Neurodiverse Connection. Thank you for joining us today for NdC In Conversation. This is going to be a roundtable discussion to mark Autism Acceptance Week. We're responding to this campaign at Neurodiverse Connection with content throughout the week, looking at how to go beyond acceptance. And in this idea of going beyond acceptance, today's topic is autistic joy. So to give introductions, my name is Dewar and I am Resources Lead at Neurodiverse Connection. And today I will be being joined by Aldred, Fare and Charli Clements to talk about topics around autistic joy and how we can use autistic joy to go beyond mere acceptance. Okay, right. On to the first question. So for all of you to think about and dive in when you're ready, what does autistic joy mean to you?
To me, I don't. So the word joy is sort of quite a meaningful word for a lot of people. For me, I sort of see it more as just accepting in who I am, and that the way I act, the way I am as a person, the emotions I have or don't have, or however it may be, or communicate with others is just me. I think the main times of joy is when I'm actually talking with other autistic people and we sort of bounce off each other. That's the main time of joy for me, because that's when I come alive, I think. But in terms of the day-to-day joy, if you like, it's more acceptance for myself in terms of just I spent, until I was diagnosed when I was 26, I spent a long time just thinking, what's wrong with my head? Why can't I do this, that? Why is this not working? And all of a sudden it was like, that might be why. And that's sort of the thing that I can sort of the most represents it to me, I guess.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think one of the very first things I did for NdC was I wrote a blog post about learning to flap my hands. And I didn't realize until I sat down and wrote it that I'd been sitting on my hands for nearly 30 years. Because once upon a time when I was a child, someone told me, sit on your hands if you can't sit still. And I took it literally. And now my partners talk about happy flapping. When I'm really happy and there's something that's gone really right, I will just have my happy flap. And it's so important. And I think being able to let your guard down around other autistic people, being able to stop masking. I don't know what the others think of this. I can see Kay nodding in the background.
Yeah, I feel really passionate about autistic joy because joy was an emotion that I didn't feel until probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm a lot older than you, Adam, so it took me longer to get there. And yeah, I feel really emotional even just talking about the concept of joy, because it is our birthright as humans, all neurotypes. And in our joy is our well-being. I think of joy as an internal experience. Happiness is quite externally kind of stimulated, but joy is you bring it up and out of you. And so autistic, again, I'm really emotional when I talk about this. Autistic joy is a beautiful type of joy to watch and see, because it's highly expressive. Generally, not for everybody, but generally it's highly expressive, and there's often a lot of movement with it. So whereas we might stim to regulate, we might also stim in our joy. And thinking of belonging, there's not many places that I'm so expressive in my joy that I feel safe enough to be expressive in it. Here I am touching into it and then coming back, how much can I express how passionate I am about it. But yeah, for me it's a very much an inward experience, and it took me a long time to get to a nervous system state and a non-trauma state to even feel that I had that real expression in me.
And I think that's something that you've both touched on, is that the autistic community, so many of us grow up, and some of us are late stage diagnosed, and I'm self-diagnosed. I have issues with the diagnosis process, but so many of us spend years going, what's wrong, and repressing and masking. And actually, when you find that community, when you find that joy, it's like a well, it's a well of hope, it's a well of support that we haven't had. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about the autistic and the wider neurodivergent community and wider neurodivergent movement. So I am going to stick to my questions. Look at me. Next question. Can you share some moments or situations in your life when you experience that feeling of autistic joy? And I'm going to come to Charlie for that.
Yeah, I think so. Like for me, I attribute this as a phrase to something really specific. This is like a really like autistic joy is quite a specific feeling for me. It's something I attribute to that really intense feeling when engaging with like a special interest or with a particular sensory experience. So although I think there is plenty of joy elsewhere, for me it's quite a specific phrase for a specific thing. So that's kind of the context for me for answering that. But I think the main example for me is like I always get it with like live events for my special interests. So certain theatre, concerts is a big one. When I've been to live gymnastics, because world gymnastics is one of my special interests. It's a bit rogue, but there we go. And because even though I find those environments quite overwhelming and I need quite a lot of adjustments to engage with them, once I'm like accommodated and comfortable in that environment, it's very all encompassing. And I think with that, it's like it's a sensory experience as well as engaging with the interest itself and being amongst other people who are interested in it in a way that you're not normally. And like for me, it's you can tell because it's like stimming, info dumping. I'm probably not going to be listening to what you're saying, to be honest. I think like yeah, so I think for me it's like my interest getting to come to life in a way that they don't when I'm kind of just sat at home really does that for me.
It's when you meet those other people who are as interested in your specialist interest as you are, and suddenly you're talking at 200 miles an hour and everyone else around you is wondering if you've just learned a new language. Yeah, I think again, it's the embodiment of joy. I know Kay touched on it, and you talking about going to places that I go to concerts quite well. I go to gigs quite a lot, and I go to death metal. I go to punk gigs. They're really sensory intense environments, but actually they are, once I've got spaces that I know I can escape to if it gets too much, it is a place of joy and it's a place of celebration. And it's the joy in this, it's almost a healing experience to have that joy and that way of expressing the things we love. I wonder if you might talk a bit more about the embodiment of joy and how that feels, Kay. I know, knowing that you are the one to talk about embodiment.
Yeah, embodiment for me is the well of joy in our body is the well of our being and our true authentic self, our unmasked self, our real expression of our true self. And for me it feels like something that comes up and out. So yeah, it's a warm space in the heart, but it's beyond that. It's like an impulse, as Charlie said, to info dump, to make you come into it with me and feel what I feel, climb in and however I want you to express it. And it's very, like I say, it is an impulse, and it is organic. And I think we see that, well, actually, I don't know how much we see it in even autistic children, actually. It's joy is not prevalent in our society anywhere. But I congratulate the autistic community in their expression of autistic joy, modeling it to humanity, that there's a possibility there that we can uncouple from the low vibe of society and come into it. I've gone off on a tangent, so I'm going to stop.
No, actually, that's quite important, because one of the things that this whole discussion is about is that as a community, we see awareness, we see acceptance, but actually, as neuromarginalized people, there comes a point where we need to move beyond acceptance. And that's the whole point of our answer to the campaign for this week, Beyond Acceptance. And we've all talked about how autistic joy can be part of a community, give us access to our specialist interests, give us that peace, that well of being. And one of my questions is, how can embracing autistic joy help us move beyond the idea of acceptance and be used to support autistic rights and stimulate progress for the autistic movement? And I'm wondering if, Adam, you'd like to say something on that.
Yeah, it's something that I talk about a lot at work in our networks and things as well. We want to go beyond acceptance, and we want advocacy, we want justice, we want liberation, right? That's what we need to be aiming for. And I think, I'll admit I'm still on my journey to find that real joy, because I've not found it yet. Various reasons, a lot of things in life circumstances have meant I can't get that yet. But I think seeing others who have that, and seeing those people speak up and be brave enough to talk about it, that empowers others to talk about it too. And whilst I don't think society should need people within the autistic community to talk about it for them to get on board, I think it is required at the moment, the way society is, because it's like, well, if we don't see it, we don't care about it, sort of thing. Whereas I think now we are, acceptance is great, but if you're only accepting someone, you're not actually empowering them, you're not advocating for them, you're not giving them that justice that they deserve, or not even giving them that equity they deserve. Because you can accept someone for who they are, but not give them any adjustments, any accommodations, or anything that will actually help them become their best self, if you like. So I think by embracing the idea of joy, for whatever it means for each individual, because it'll mean something different for each individual, but I think by embracing that, it allows people to come out of their shells and show their true selves, which then empowers others to do the same, which then actually makes the rest of society see, actually, yeah, we are just different people who think differently, who act differently, who, but we all have an amazing, a significant integral part to play in this diverse and functional society that we should, and we are striving for. We see all these, and I know it's off tangent a little bit. We see all this, and what you said, Kay, we see all this sort of horrific stuff in the news about disability, about neurodivergence, about oppression, about marginalization of communities. That is a smokescreen to what's actually happening underneath, which is we are actually on the path of progress. It's just the minority is shouting louder because they don't like their privilege being challenged. That's where we're at the moment, I feel. So I think the more we can shout and the more we can advocate and empower each other, I think we will overcome that. It will be a bit brocky, but we will overcome it, and that's how we can really get to the point of where we need to be.
It is that neurodivergent movement, that neurodivergent liberation. And I wonder if anyone has anything to add to what Adam said.
I think for me, it's that society is so insistent that autism has to be either this deficit that we've got to cure, that we've got to get rid of, that, we should not be enjoying, you should not be proud of it has to be gotten rid of, or it's this superpower that they have to use in their workplace to boost productivity, to capitalize on it. And it can never be just this middle neutral diversity. It can't just, we're not allowed to just be, like, it has to be one way or the other. And I personally, I don't agree with that at all. I'm very much someone who talks a lot about neutrality, and I personally love being autistic, but even if I didn't, that there's so much nuance to the conversation beyond it being this one way or the other thing. And I think with Autistic Joy, it's people understanding the importance of it and the uniqueness of it, and understanding that wider spiky profile concept where, there's nothing wrong with how our profiles are in terms of them being spikier, in terms of our skills and our needs and stuff being much spikier and up and down in comparison to a neurotypical peer, because Autistic Joy is really part of that, and with support that can be such a huge part of a really fulfilling, like, lovely life to live, but ultimately we're not given that at the moment. Like, we're so rarely given that opportunity and the support to make it that really lovely thing. Like, at the moment it is it is masked, or it's seen as childish, or it's put forward as something that you shouldn't be engaging with. But actually, in a better society, in a more fulfilling society, it would support us to engage with education and hobbies and interests and all of those things that at the moment we are often so pulled away from because we're not allowed to just be who we are.
I think coming off that, there's a big issue around not being allowed to be mortal. You're either so disabled that it's the ableist concept of, oh, you must be so disabled, you must not want to be here, you must not want to be alive being that disabled, which we all know is a completely rubbish concept. Or you're so superhuman, it must be wonderful to be you, and you're not allowed to be mortal. You have to either be so disabled that the ableists can say, well, you don't want to be around anyway, or so superhuman that you can be put on a pedestal. And then we get into inspiration porn, we get into, oh, this person, oh, well, they might struggle, but look how many degrees they've got. And as somebody with quite a few degrees, my degrees do not help me go to Sainsbury's by myself on a Saturday morning. And it's trying to use joy to say that, yes, we have issues. Yes, we have problems that can be very disabling. And I think one of the things that we see sometimes in the autistic community is autism isn't disabling. And for me, yes, it is. But I'm not superhuman either. And I think that, coming off what you're saying, is really important, to just be mortal and have joys and have days that are bad. And joy for us is about being glad that we are alive and glad that we have our specialist interests and building a community around that. And I wonder if anyone has any comments on that.
Yeah, as an ex-teacher for many years, and the education system, my experience, one of its main kind of goals is to quash joy.
Yep.
Embodied joy, particularly in all neurotypes. But the divergent expression, again, if we can use that word, of ways of thoughts, of ideas, is really hammered out of you once you start to go to preschool. So what I spend a lot of my time visioning what education could be like if we based it in joy, and followed the trains of our interests and our thoughts and our impulses and our longings. And I really believe we could have a functional learning environment based on themes or topics that people bring and spark off. It can happen, but it requires thinking outside the box from the educators and creativity. And creativity is the landscape of joy anyway. So that's my impulse to share right now about that.
I think that ties really nicely with the work of Bell Hooks, and I will get the title wrong, but they wrote a book about love, and not just romantic love, not just familial love, but they talk about love your workplace, love your colleagues, bring love into everything you do. And I think, this is what we need to do: bring joy, and bring autistic joy, bring that embodied, that physical joy into everything we do. Which I am sticking to my questions, which leads me nicely to the next one. In what way would you make autistic joy a community action? How would you take the joy that we have doing this? Because I'm having a lovely time. How would we take this conversation between autistic people and take that joy to a wider community?
Yeah, for me, it is love is the holder, is the common thread of belonging. And if we take, when I'm in my autistic, I can only speak to myself, when I'm in my autistic joy, I'm like this, I'm kind of connected, and my heart is like whoosh, really big. Now, I take that in, and it happens to me daily. It's happened to me today. I take that into an environment where there is non-autistic people, and I can feel now straight away what that does to me, to my heart. I'm perceived as different, and it's closed down, and I shrink and I compress. So how do we take this into communities and belonging? We have to ally. We have to link our arms and hold tight, that we're able to stay in our joy and become this force that pushes it out, to push down the forces that are closing and wanting to close it down. So it comes back to what Adam said, it's a liberation action. And liberation can only happen in community, and that's allying and holding each other tight as we move forward. I'm probably speaking a little bit symbolically here, but I feel I can only feel it. I'm not really good with words sometimes.
No, that is, you know, linking arms, forming those bonds, making a community that is strong enough to face the stigma, the neuronormalization, the neuronormativity, and just the ableism that we face as neuromarginalized people. And I wonder, Adam, do you have anything to say in reflection on what Kay's been talking about?
Yeah, definitely. I think I completely agree with you, Kay. I think that the first thing, you know, when I started in terms of advocating and trying to, you know, in workplace and stuff, I do it in my own workplace and others too, and try and help. And I think the first step is we need to try and help bring others along in the journey with us, right? Non-autistic people, the people who are ableist or not, they don't know they're ableist, but they just, you know, all the people who see the fact that I'm autistic as a superpower or so disabled and I can't live. I'm in the middle. Some days are awful, some days I'm better. You know, that's life. So I'm a big fan of sort of what I call grassroots movement. We need to build from the ground up. We need to show that, you know, and it needs people to be it's awful. And we should have allies who advocate for us. Totally agree. But sometimes we have to advocate for ourselves as well, and actually just stick our heads above and just go, this is me, like it or not. Because if you go, this is me, someone else will also feel safer to go, this is me. And then you've already built a community who can then come together, and actually then you realize there's a lot more in the community than perhaps you first thought, or than perhaps they first thought too. You know, the silent people who didn't know. I can guarantee I work with a lot of people who are neurodivergent who don't even know they're neurodivergent, but we get on because I know they are, and sort of that's how we click with each other. And I think by building that community from the ground up, you almost force everyone else to sort of come along with you, because you show them that actually there's nothing wrong with who you are. And it sort of it naturally breaks down the barriers when you come together and when you're sort of unapologetically yourself. Now that can't always happen, and sometimes we still have to mask a lot in this society, especially because we have to protect ourselves. And you know, I hear a lot, and some people say, again, some people within the community and outside the community say, oh, well, just take your mask off and just be who. And we can't always do that because it's not safe. A, it's not safe to do it, and B, I don't even know how to do that. I don't know how to take my mask off. I can't do it fully with anyone. Least of all, you know, people who are not autistic and not neurodivergent themselves. So I'm not an advocate of, oh, take your mask off fully, because it's not safe to do that for most people at the moment, and we've got to. But you can take your mask off in certain ways in certain situations, and I think that's where we can get to in terms of just. And yes, we need more than acceptance, but the first step is acceptance. The first step is people accepting who we are, because then they will start, you know, fighting with us, not for us. We don't need people to fight for us. We need people to fight with us. I don't want someone to speak for me. I want someone to speak with me. And I think that's what we need as a community. You know, like I said, it's if people start speaking for us, they do it wrong, because they say, oh, well, we're superhuman, or we're, you know, complete opposite. And both of those are ableist concepts, in my opinion. Whereas what we need is people to just go, these are people, you know, just give them the accommodations, give them the adjustments, give them the support they need. Because if you do that, they will find their niche, they will find their special interest, they will find the place where they thrive. And that's how you can build a functional, if it's in a workplace, a functional team, if it's in a society, a functional society. And that's how you do it.
Yeah. I wonder what people's thoughts are on, obviously we're talking a lot about autistic liberation, but actually wider neurodivergent liberation. And I'm wondering whether people can take some of the more joy-focused aspects from things like the Black liberation movement, the LGBT liberation movement, thinking, you know, the aftermath of Stonewall was pride. And, you know, the first pride was a protest. And then looking at that kind of movement, the women's liberation movement, the gay liberation movement, or the queer liberation movement, and the Black liberation movement, all of those movements, yes, had very strong political elements, but so many of their actions were rooted in joy, and there was community joy. And I wonder if we can take a lesson from those movements and bring them into the neurodivergent movement. And I wonder if anyone has any comments on that. Adam, I'm seeing you nod.
Yeah, I think everyone said it, lead with love, and show people that there's a better way. You know, I've seen it a lot in sort of masculinity. Okay, there's a big focus on it at the moment. There's misogyny in society, the sort of patriarchal society we're in, and a big problem for that is because we're not showing young boys, young men, grown men, even adult men, that there's a different way to be liberated within yourself. And I think we can take real solace and real sort of it's all intersectional, right? And if we can show people, actually, you don't have to be what everyone thinks you should be. You can be who you are. And I think that is as applicable to autistic joy and neurodivergent joy in general as it is Black joy or queer joy or, you know, anything, or masculine joy. And, you know, I can see that the same way, because the way I, you know, it's we're all on this sort of, every community we're in, we sort of sit within this spectrum of people, right? And everyone will be in a slightly different place within that, whether you're in the autistic community, whether you're in the ADHD or wide neurodivergent community, whether you're in men, women, non-binary people, trans people, whatever it is. It's all part of this sort of community, and we all sit somewhere differently within that. And actually, it's about empowering people to say, actually, whoever you are within that, that's okay. And sort of lead with that sort of love and compassion for every single person, because I think that's how we can really get it through. Yeah.
I think actually, I was thinking this earlier about a comment that you made about inviting people to the table, basically, and that at the moment people are being invited to the table, but it's almost like, we'll invite you to the table, but woe betide you if you need a gluten-free meal. And actually, what we need to get to is the point where it's not your presence at the table is tolerated, but woe betide you if you have to have a difference, if you have to have something that means you can't do what everyone else is doing. And it's more a case of, welcome to the table, you know, who are you, what do you like to eat? And I can see Charlie nodding, grinning in the background. Have you got anything to add to what's been said, Charlie?
I think for me, a big part of this is meeting people where they are and helping them undo internalized ableism and lateral ableism too. I think, you know, the community has a big problem with lateral ableism, and I think we've all been guilty of it at times in our journey, where you've spent so many years of nobody understanding you that you're just like, nobody gets it. And actually, there is a whole community of people that either get it or get it to an extent or want to meet you where you are, but it's very hard to open yourself out to that. And I think it's very easy then to fall into, we get a lot of lateral ableism about different support needs, or we get lateral ableism because, you know, for me as an autistic and chronically ill person, I'm often saying, actually, that advice or that system or whatever is not going to work for me because these two things clash. I need this instead, and people, you know, just can't relate to that, so they just don't feel like I am welcome in that space or whatever. And I think really meeting people where they are to undo that and understand liberation and understand that wider community outside of where they're coming from, when we're, you know, most of like it's very hard to find an untraumatized autistic person, so there's no real wonder that people are coming to the table feeling the way that they're feeling. But I think meeting them there, feeling like we can support them to undo that, and being open to constantly learning. Like, I've been diagnosed for 8 years now. I only started unmasking like 4, and I'm someone who says we'll never unmask fully in a capitalist society. I just don't believe that we can. But it is something I'm doing piece by piece. But I think like just being open to that journey, being continual, is such a big thing. Like I think people genuinely believe that one day they'll be masked and one day they won't, and they can just suddenly experience like autistic joy and community and all of these things. And actually that is going to take, it is a slow process that you have to really open yourself up to. And I think some of that is about representation, and representation being really intersectional in a way that it's not really right now. I think, and I mean like everywhere, like media representation for sure, but also in the community, in training spaces, in wherever. Most of those spaces are not intersectional, and most people are often not seeing themselves represented because it is still cishet white men, or a lot of the time now actually a lot of cishet white women too. It's kind of shifting that other way. So yeah, I think for me it's all about this kind of thing of how do we get to a place where people are genuinely open to each other in a way that they're actually not at the moment.
Yeah, and I think the unmasking, because there is a big movement to unmask, I think you've hit the nail on the head quite nicely. It's people think that they're going to realize they're autistic and then 2 days later they'll have unmasked and they'll be full of autistic joy. But actually, I know for myself, unmasking was 3 years of therapy and a couple of COVID lockdowns of not being able to hide from it anymore. And it can be a very difficult process because you have to unlearn so much of what you have to learn it, because you are going to have ableism that you don't even know you have because we are steeped in it in society. And then you end up with having to realize what you can and can't do and take stock of what actually unmasking means. And for me, I do not go to the supermarket alone anymore. I don't know how anyone goes grocery shopping. I really don't, because I do not go to the supermarket by myself. And I don't have to put on that mask of a sane human being going around the supermarket. And as someone with severe mental health issues, as well as autism, going around the supermarket would take me all day. And then I spend 2 days in bed. And actually that's a big thing when people are masked. They think it's going to be just not being autistic. And I wonder whether that's something that actually we need to address when we talk about stopping masking.
I think it's, unfortunately, I think it's kind of swung the wrong way, where it went from unmasking not really being a topic or a thing that was, like when I was first diagnosed, it wasn't really a thing. And I'm glad that it is a thing, don't get me wrong, but I think it's swung the other way in that people only really see it as surface level things. So they just think unmasking is not forcing yourself to make eye contact and stimming in public. That's kind of the extent to which people understand unmasking, rather than understanding it as literally every fiber of your being and your personality. And I don't think, like, there's certain things that I'm heavily aware that I do, but even if I tried, I wouldn't be able to get rid of them. Like things like scripting, like I script everything to death. It doesn't matter if I'm going into the same situation every single day, I still have to run those scripts, and I don't know how to not do that. But I think with this masking thing, it seems like an on-off switch in a way that it simply isn't. And I don't think I'll ever fully understand the extent to which I'm doing that. And even if I did understand that full extent, I don't think I'd ever be able to stop all of it. And then, even if I did want to and feel able to, is it actually safe for me to do so? And do I put myself in a position where, in a capitalist society, okay, would I be able to work? Would I be able to function? Would I be able to you know, survive basically. And then if you're a Black person, for example, there's even that extra level of unsafety there as well. So I think personally, to me, like unmasking as a thing is kind of this layered concept that we haven't even really begun to like undo, in a way that I don't really think current discussion and representation of it really gets to.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I realize we're going a little bit off topic. I knew we would, and I'm very glad that we did, because I think the next in conversation may have to be around masking, and you're more than welcome to come back if you've enjoyed talking to me. So I'm going to get on to the last sort of question. We've got about 20 minutes left. And what would you say to someone else or to your younger self struggling with feeling autistic joy, with the concept of autistic joy? If you think back to when you were diagnosed, the younger self, what would you say to them as, you know, somebody who has been in the community now? And I know I get called an elder, which I'm not sure I approve of, but I do get called an elder. And what would you say to somebody who was right at the start of learning about their neurodivergence? Kay, do you want to take that one?
I will, but I do feel quite not the elder in these scenarios, because my actual diagnosis was only a year ago, although, you know, obviously not. That makes sense.
What would you have said to you a year ago?
Yeah, oh God, go slower. Go slower. Don't believe that the neurodivergent community is going to be like you, or give you a role model of a pathway to follow. So I guess that, and also, people's hearts aren't open. So like my unmasked self is like just like joy, literally, just big heart and real empathy. No one, I haven't found really a lot of reflection of that, and that's fine. Maybe because I've done a lot of embodiment work, so I've kind of run these things alongside. So go slow, take care, discern the unmasking. Charlie, I wish I'd spoken to you in more detail. And also because I have chronic illness as well, and I don't go out that much. But don't think just because you're unmasking and then take yourself out that you're going to be met with acceptance and belonging. So I don't mean to be negative, but I think that's realistic in society. I hope someone can offer something a little bit more positive than that.
Charlie, do you want to dive in?
I think for me, it's understanding, again, how much you actually have to uncover, and understanding that pre-identification, diagnosis, whatever, you've been under so much pressure to be someone else that it makes total sense as to why this wouldn't come naturally. Like, you know, you've spent however many years, and I think, you know, we talk about like late diagnosis and stuff, and obviously for some people that is much longer than others, but whatever amount of time, that's going to be, you know, a lot of trauma and a lot of pressure. So it makes sense that this wouldn't just come naturally one day. And I think it's like, it's just, yeah, it's again like going slow, going gradual, starting to just unpick the things that you have control of and that do make you happy, and just kind of going from there. You know, doing these things with people who feel safe, who understand you, who will accommodate you, who will get you out of a situation if that's what's needed, who, you know, help you to engage with different sensory tools or whatever. You know, having that sense of safety, although it isn't something that is inherent, it is something that you can begin to build, whether that be in your community or with people around you or just within yourself. And going from there and kind of letting it come to you a little bit with the Autistic Joy thing. Like, it's the whole point of it is that it's this very all-encompassing, intense feeling. And so it makes sense that that's not going to be immediate when you're in a body that's been traumatized and under pressure. I guess.
It's allowing yourself the time, and it's like trying to force yourself to be happy. It's almost, I really am not a big fan of Christmas because everyone's like, be happy. And like, what am I being happy about? It's Christmas, be happy. And I think that's one of the things that maybe when we start talking about unmasking, that we risk is that construct that, oh, well, you should be happy because you've unmasked. You should be experiencing joy. And then people are trying to force themselves to experience that joy, which actually, you know, we've talked about it today, comes from accepting yourself and allowing yourself to have good days, have bad days, and taking comfort in knowing yourself. It's about having community. It's about having specialist interests that bring us joy. And when you were talking about going to concerts, I was thinking about how one of the things that brings me the greatest joy is writing academic papers at 2 a.m. And I talk about it being an adrenaline sport. You know, that's when I get that absolute well of joy, is when it's 2 a.m. and I'm 2,000 words in case anyone thought I was really cool or anything. But so Adam, do you want to add anything about what you would say to someone about autistic joy?
Yeah, and I think I'll go back to the first moment I properly burnt out, which was like 11, 12, which is where all my issues started. And first thing for me is find where you feel safe, the people you feel safe with, the activities you feel safe doing, as I was going through school, the subjects you feel safe and enjoy, not just what you think you should be doing, actually do what you really want to do and feel sort of invested in, because that's where you really will find the safety. And I think for me, it's all about safety. I think also find your community, don't just find the autistic community, find your community within that, because as we've sort of said already, the community itself is quite a monolith sometimes and can have some very binary viewpoints within it. And, you know, I connect a lot more with the people who have the nuance, because that's where I sit too, is about respecting each individual's experience as it is. I think also, you know, be kind to yourself, that there might well be a form of grieving process, especially as you find out you're not the person maybe you thought you were, or things that you thought you could do, you might not be able to do. But just be kind to yourself within that. But also the grieving process in terms of, you know, almost like as you try to unmask but can't, you know, that can be quite traumatic sometimes if it backfires. You know, if you try to do it and it backfires on you, that can be a really hard time. But just understand it's not your fault. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just testing where you can and can't be safe to do certain things. And then, yeah, as Charlie said, don't expect it's going to change overnight. You know, I think especially I've got a lot of chronic health issues as well. I've got constant chronic pain, and because of that, I will always mask to a certain extent, because if I didn't, I'd just be overwhelmed 100% of the time, and that will cause me to burn out periodically too. And it's about understanding where you are at the time and what you can and can't push, and when you can and can't push it. You know, right at the start, I tried to push myself through because I was like, well, if I can do it, then that's proving to myself that I can do it. When actually, you've got to do that at the right time, because if it's at a time you're already at sort of a heightened state of overwhelm, it'll just send you over the edge. So I think it all links into sort of safety and feeling safe and being safe. You know, whether it's where you live, the people you spend time with, the activities you do, and if you can find that safety, not all the time, because it's not always going to be safe, but if you can find that safety, or you know where that safety is to go to when you need it, I think that's the main thing to sort of try and help manage everything else.
So I think basically what it all boils down to that we've talked about today is that autistic joy is a catalyst and a place that takes us somewhere where we feel safe, where we feel supported, where we have that community. And something we've come back to again and again and again is that having autistic joy is a place where we can feel loved and we can love. And I think, does anyone have any final comments before I wrap up with that?
I will just say, I just believe that humans have the basic need to be seen heard, valued, and feel safe. That's my vision of education. If we could create spaces, their spaces of belonging. So yeah, where we can give and receive love, and even just using that word, if I have ever taken that in now, and it's just met with, we're phobic of love, we're phobic of expressions of kindness, and so yeah, I just wanted to say that I feel that's important.
Well, I would like to say that I have absolutely loved spending time with all of you this afternoon, and I was a bit nervous about how this would go, being the first one, and it has been so full of joy. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming with open hearts and being honest and open about your experiences. It has been absolutely wonderful. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and I know people have places to be. So thank you, Kay, Adam, and Charlie, for joining us. And we hope that everyone watching at home has enjoyed this roundtable. And if you have, we would love to hear your thoughts on Autistic Joy. Either comment if you're watching on YouTube, or if you are watching on Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it now, reply there. It has been a pleasure hosting you today. We are Neurodiverse Connection, a community interest company dedicated to elevating the voice of neurodivergent people to help them flourish and thrive, and hopefully find some joy along the way. You can find us at ndconnection.co.uk, follow us at Twitter at ndconnectionuk, and find us on LinkedIn. And again, thank you so much to my panelists for coming along today. Thank you to the audience, and take care, and may you find joy in whatever you are doing for the rest of the day.